everyone. Welcome to Blue Star Rising, Templar Awakening. Michael Henry Dunn here with my esteemed friend, Reverend Maya Nartumid. Hey there, Maya. How are you today?
Hello. Well, I am much better. Thank you.
All right. Well, today is a particularly fascinating subject, which I confess I am less familiar with than a lot of the other beautiful, deep subjects that Maya has brought forward from the Thoth extreme for us to explore. And this is the Aeriopax, portals and stargates. And Maya and I were just discussing before we went on the air here about the what I understand is the sort of the transcending, transdimensional dynamic that existence itself depends upon, which is the Aeriopax, and plays into the reality of what portals are, what stargates are, and how they're different from portals. So we have a really beautiful video again to share with you, which we will then discuss. Maya, do you want to just give us a little bit of a introduction to what we'll be seeing?
Yes. Well, the whole topic of the Aeriopax, Aka Isis I, was probably given to me it was in the 1980s. And so you'll be hearing some of the actual written word from that time, in addition to my commentary. And it is one of the core elements of the whole Thothic science that you all have probably been following along here with. And so, it's so important. I felt it needed to have its own little time here.
Okay. Well, with that, we're going to go right into the video itself. And it's about 25 minutes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, about 25 minutes. And as usual, it's beautifully done, engrossing, both visually and in terms of the deep subject matter. So please enjoy, and we'll be back with you immediately afterwards to explore.
Before we begin our journey into the Aeriopax, it is important to understand what Thoth means by the Atosic universe. It is an intelligent God plane with a neutral universal field that holds the balance between the universe and anti-universe, preventing these two potentials from coming into direct contact with each other, which would result in destruction of both. It is the unified field of all consciousness where there is no separation. All time fields and universal strata striking a harmonic in the center of the soul's atoma or inner heart sun, which is the composite of all 7 chakras. The Atosic universe is the charge of release from time, space, and matter divisions. Atosic state. In this sense, it is the plane of the Atosic, a platform for its substantiation as a reality. On either side of the Nutra-Atosic are 2 more universal states. One is the antimatter, and the other the matter. While this trinity can be viewed as separate universes, they can also be seen as simply a threefold universe. There is also the Atosic Savata. This is a spheric horizon, which we have also referred to as the horizon of Aton. It is the generative cell that creates the threefold universes. It is the Atosic, meaning released from having any space or dimension. The Atosic is also the sacred nothing. We have referred to it as a universe, as this term most suits the human idea of a field of being. The Nutra-Atosic with the anti and matter universes form a trifold dynamic. One could see the Nutra-Atosic as the Christhood, and the anti as the Holy Spirit, and the matter realm or universe as the manifestation. The entrance point for the souls of Earth and their universal realm into the Atosic universe is the golden star of Mazuriel. The touch point in this universe for Mazuriel is the Lion's Gate of the constellation of Leo. However, the old gate is through Saturn in our solar system, which is still available to us. Going off script here for a moment, the Atosic, the universe, the Savata, the whole shebang, has been, for me, the most mysterious of, I think, anything that Thoth has ever brought to me. I never feel I can quite apprehend it. And I think that is because it is simply beyond human rationale. When we say we're going to, at some point, enter the Atosic, well, what does that mean? There is no space, there is no time. What do we do? So, but from the Thothic standpoint, it's a presence that creates a whole nother understanding, another living of reality. We see reality in a particular way. And if we cannot understand that there is another form of reality, we simply can't organize it in our brains. So instead of trying to, drive ourselves crazy doing that, I have found the best way to handle the Atosic is think of it as simply an equation, like a big fat zero. And in math, you have to put the zeros certain places to make sense of the numbers, So that's the way I kind of look at it, because it's going to be a long time before we ever are prepared to move into the Atosic. But still, the Atosic influences us. It influences our lives. It influences our souls and spirits and our evolution as spiritual beings. This influence takes a lot of different forms, but essentially it is about finding that 0 point frequency in our being, that neutral zone in our being, and allowing that to lead us to the more expanded reality of our lives and what is going on for us in our soul experience, incarnationally and beyond the incarnation. So now let us continue and go to the Isis Eye, or Aeriopax, as Thoth calls it. He gives it both those names. Isis Eye is a little more symbolic because it has a feminine definition to it, in the sense that it is, while it's very dynamic in one way, it's essentially a gift from the mother. It's an aspect of Sophia, of her eye of consciousness. Here he chooses to call it the Isis Eye. You could call it the Sophia Eye. The Isis Eye, or Aeriopax, is becoming an ever more important geometric dynamic in both the planetary and personal aspects of the ascension. The geometric was first given to me in 1994 by Thoth as a means to open an omni gate into the Atosic universe. Since that time, it has been spoken of or referred to numerous times by Thoth as a core component of the ascension dynamic. Now, I'm going to pause again for a moment. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it is mentioned here that omni-gate. Well, it's omnidirectional, right? It has no specific direction, but it encompasses all directions. So opening an omni-gate to the Atosic universe doesn't mean that you're have ascended so greatly you can just walk into the Atosic universe. Again, think of it as a 0 point that we contain in our being. Yes, there's the universal aspect of it, but that feeds us as human beings and creates potentials for us to move through stargates, right? And we have to have a connection to the Atosic, to that 0 point, in order to do so. Then when he speaks of the touch point in this universe from Azuriel, this mysterious gold star, whatever that particularly means, again, it's still somewhat of a mystery to me, but it's in another dimension, obviously. But the touch point for that is the Lion's Gate in the constellation of Leo. And then it also states, this is a more recent understanding for me that was given to me just last year, I think, that Saturn in our solar system, it is some form of an old gate left over, but it's not non-functional. It's just different and could be accessed in a different way. I've been reading to you from something I wrote probably in 1995 or 96. And so in that time, I state, I had a verification from a current day Mayan priest that it was the same as what Mayans use on the inner planes as their time gate. As a matter of fact, this individual was quite surprised to see the piece of jewelry I had crafted in the form of this geometric sitting on our altar, as he wasn't aware anyone else outside the inner circle of the current Mayan priesthood knew about it. Thoth states that the Aeriopax is a geometric for bringing together the Atosic universe as a point of mind, not in a physical sense, but as a hologram in the mind, enabling that sentience to sustain passage through conflicting time gates. The Aeriopax harmonic is a grid of time-reality exchange. Once activated, the grid allows the passage between multi-layered time fields without distortion. There are 16 reference nodes, these points of synapse, which create a referral of information through the grid. There are 6 matrices in which to create virtual reality fields, and the rhombic spinning field in the center. This spinning field is the time tunnel, or vehicle for movement within the entire process. The parallel bar is the core accelerator, charging, discharging, and maintaining the energy separation between realities. Without the core accelerator, all interacting realities would become enmeshed in one another, something like wadding bundles of chewing gum together and then trying to separate them. When the Aeriopax is activated through human intelligence and spiritual rapport with its dynamic, focused through the earth, according to Thoth, those participating form a spinning wheel of emerald light around us. From this wheel we see the Aeriopax arise, each of the 16 points fiery yods forming the book of life. The 6 fields within the boundaries of the points are quickened as windows of crystal containing the libraries of all earth dimension. We set the living Merkaba of the Aeriopax upon the land. In another passage from Thoth on the ascension of Earth, he states that once the planet is fully within the conversion zone, its central sunatoma, in the very center of the Earth, also known as the Holy of Holies, will lock onto the greater Isis I coordinates emanating from the 4444 Stargate, placing this sphere we currently inhabit into the center diamond of the geometric. Once the planet and the souls who choose to ascend into the new Earth star's first stage, or Numis Om, move through the 4444 Stargate, and then, at a stage of this process, full integration of the old Earth and Numis Om occurs, the Earth's Isis Eye becomes the Iris Eye in a brilliant flash, and the baseline of planet Earth becomes Numis Om, a world system 2 planet, the booster rocket of the old Earth falling away and recycling into another System 1, no longer a part of the package we call Earth. As I wrote in the Temple Doors Volume 2, 1991 issue, the planet's Ka is no longer Altheria, for it has progressed into a more defined and rarefied state, known now as Numis Om. I want to pause for a moment. These words that Thoth is giving me are names, Altheria and then Numis Om. These are qualifying particular stages. However, when he gave me Altheria, it was like in the 80s, and then he gives me Numis Om in the 90s. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden the new Earth star switched from Altheria to Numis Om, just right there magically in between those two time periods, because our time and its time is completely different. So we can't qualify time here with time there. So he's giving me some kind of referencing. Okay, you've understood about this stage. So now let me tell you about the next stage. But it is not in sync with our time frame. When the blue ray of our Earth is fully integrated with the violet ray of Numis Om, there will burst forth into a glorious blue-violet flame the iris eye. This is the bonding flame of the new Earth star, when our world and its supernal form will join at the apex of the Metatronic spiral, through the eye of the needle, the iris eye, through what Solara of Starborn refers to as the healing of Orion. We are an inspirited world. We will be able to depolarize our consciousness so that we can enter the iris eye where all polarities are one. The depolarization will not complete in the new Earth star. Only when we go beyond World System 2 will we enter into the Atosic universe through the golden star of Mazuriel. However, once the iris eye flash occurs, we will experience an acute balance of polarities within our new Earth star journey. Returning to the Aeriopax and the here and now, this sacred geometric can be utilized singly and especially powerfully in groups to create full Metatronic Merkabic fields for temporal periods of time in which germinations of new Earth light codes can become engendered and multiply on their own beyond the temporal Aeriopax dynamic engendered. This then takes our humanity a giant step further in becoming the Elohim of our own created new Earth star. Once we get in touch with this reality through various forms of being and expression, all relating what is here being called the Aeriopax dynamic, we need no assistance from angels or ascended beings to accomplish our own regenesis, for we will know, indeed experience, that they and us are one. Some years ago, in a session with Thoth I did for William Buehler, Thoth gave information on the Zinzi, or 6 states of the Aeriopax dynamic. Now, this is referencing personal work with the Aeriopax. The first, elemental, systemic, functional, and sentient. The second, connective, option choices, communicative, path to macrocosm. The third, merging streams of reality, finding unity in dualistic systems. The fourth, primary activation in heart coherency to all points of intelligence. The fifth, transcending dualism, hierarchy, transfiguring primary elements. And the sixth, embracing all powers, potentials, and principles as a living and vibrating wave of the fearless flame. And now let us look at the Isis Eye as related to the Great Pyramid of Giza. Thoth states, the Temple of the Risen One, Great Pyramid, has pyramidal programs of light embedded within it in accordance to the flower of life pattern, called by several names in the ancient past, which we choose to call here the Safa, also Safra, Sepha, and Sephira, which means the way to divinity or sacred unity. Trace the pattern, and there you shall open the gateway to the chamber of the sun. Now, the chamber of the sun, which I believe was mentioned in J.J. Hertog's book, Thoth calls that, or calls the seed within it, more clearly, the midden chamber. An Akashic translation from the Book of the Queen. Safa was known as the Queen. My love arises with the night. She penetrates all experience with her beauty and reigns over the day. She is the desire of the soul, completed in the unity of spirit. From Thoth, understand that the true meaning of the flower of life, or the Safa, is not a series of lines to be traced on a grid, but the pattern in the heart that leads through the mother, queen, to the son, king, in the body, mind, and soul. There is a corollary in the chamber of the risen one that allows the true initiate to become awakened and activated, to be the necessary light codes within his/her being for this ascensional moment. It is not necessary for a person to be physically in the pyramid for this to occur. The temple of the risen one is merely identifying this awakening process in the being and facilitating it, if called upon by the initiate to do so. The Aeriopax is the inside core deliverer of the package, found within the Star of David Merkaba as a vehicle for ascension. Remember, Thoth calls the 4444's Ascension Stargate as the Star Grail. As such, when the whole dynamic spins, it creates a cup as a torsion field, which becomes the crucible for transport. Thoth has shared with me that the Great Pyramid of Giza is a living dynamic of the Aeriopax. He further states that should 16 or more persons come together there in synergic process with the Aeriopax dynamic, a further level of entry would be achieved for the Earth into the new Earth hologram. If anyone decides to gather a group of 16 or more for such an Aeriopax process, either at the Great Pyramid or remotely connected to the pyramid, or even other sacred sites, you may use this statement. We form a spinning wheel of emerald light around us. From this wheel we see the Isis Eye arise. Each of the 16 points as fiery yods together form the book of life. The 6 fields within the boundaries of the points are quickened as windows of crystal containing the libraries of all earth dimension. We set this living Merkaba of Aeriopax upon the land. All sacred sites have some kind of portal connection. They may be mini portals or larger portals. They may be asleep or awake, active or non-active, in other words. But if it's considered a sacred site, especially going back through time, you can be sure there's some kind of what we call portal activity there, or at least in a subtle state. So by working with the Aeriopax in these areas, that portal or portals responds to it, which doesn't mean that you suddenly open up a portal and walk through and you've disappeared into another dimension, but it does mean that you're helping the planet regenerate the energy fields in these locations, which means to regenerate it in the entire planet. Let us briefly look at the Eye of Ra for a moment. Thoth has told us that when the universal tear in consciousness occurred, the Eye of Ra was exposed. It is an intersection point of universal ley lines, much as there are intersections for ley lines upon the Earth, many of which are referred to as power points or vortices. So what Thoth is indicating here is that the Aeriopax holds the key to healing the universal tear in consciousness, for that must be healed before the Eye of Ra may return to Source. It is the healing of this macrocosmic aspect of duality that will allow the universal fabric to resume its cohesive web and flow, with the Eye of Ra being returned to its greater function of passing information between the higher light worlds freely. The current condition is such that the guardian matrices, such as the Telosakara, have been installed upon the Eye of Ra to prevent fractured reality energy information from moving freely through this portal into the unviolated universes. In conclusion, this is a vast topic, and we've only skimmed the surface of it here. One thing that needs to be understood about the Aeriopax is that it exists in all living and dynamic systems. It exists naturally there. Because without it, one could not go from one dimension to another. One could not pass their consciousness from one dimension to another. Obviously, all these dimensions exist, but to get there in the sense of a physical body or a consciousness realm, astral, or anything of that nature, one has to have an active Aeriopax within the being. And then when you're looking at portals and things on the planet, those need the Aeriopax as well do wormholes and everything of that nature in the cosmic. Now, there are those portals that have been violated, and those have faulty systems to them with depleted or practically non-existent Aeriopaxes. They are chaotic systems and certainly to be stayed away from. There's also those that have been created mechanistically. Now, ultra beings and whatever, they can create beautifully aligned Metatronic portals. They know how to do that. But lower beings that are working very much on a fractured orotronic half-light spectrum create portals for themselves, but these are very half-light. They just don't go anywhere except exactly where these beings wish for them to go. They're very limited, and they're designed specifically to carry out agendas. So they're not neutral by any means. But what we're addressing here are natural and highly developed, spiritually made portals in the being, in the planets, in the universe, which allow one to move consciousness and atoms from point to point. Those portals must have an active and complete Aeriopax system within it.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Well, something came up for me as I was listening and watching, which is that even more so than a lot of the other videos that we've shared, that this is more even than graduate school metaphysics. This is like PhD metaphysics. And it was, beautifully explained and brought forward. And the coherence of it, the alignment of it with so much else that we have explored and you've shared over the last few months, Maya, to me gives it this power of engagement that I encourage everybody to take the time to see it again. And as you've just shared with me now, there's a second, shorter video that will be linked below here on this YouTube that specifically goes into the practical use that one can make of the Aeriopax, and also the difference between portals and stargates. Is that right?
Yes, yes. The link will take you to the both videos, like a playlist. You know, you'll have the one that you just saw, and then the shorter one that continues the topic. I'd actually intended to put in the first one more about the difference between the portals and the stargates, since that's the title of it, but somehow that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Basically, even though I say it again on the other video, all portals are not stargates, but all stargates are portals. That now Thoth is using the term in his own way. Of course, Stargate is something we've seen on TV, and it's been around, but he's using it in a specific way. Portals are the function of being able to go into other dimensions. Stargates are very refined, very universal, and they are totally Metatronic. If you have a Stargate that's not functioning properly, it ain't no Stargate anymore. It's more just a portal of some kind that is maybe not fully Metatronic. So that's the difference from his perspective.
Okay. Well, I'd like to get into the question of because of the ascension dynamic, the ascension timeline is a unifying thread that connects so many of the programs that we've done over the months. One thing that particularly struck me when you were talking about the role of the Aeriopax in the ascension dynamic, that it reminded me of a previous conversation we had on Blue Star Rising, in which we talked about the new Earth star, its connection to Orion, its connection to Rigel, the origin story of human consciousness, and why Thoth chose to refer to this original planet that was in the system of the blue star Rigel. Why that planet from which human consciousness originated was called Atlantis by Thoth as a means of tying that original planet to what unfolded here on Earth in Atlantis in terms of a misuse of divine technology, a cataclysm, and an exile, right? And that when we're talking about the ascension dynamic and pyramidus radius matrix and numisome and what will we experience, what's going to happen, and I remember asking you, well, okay, so the new Earth star, I mean, where is it actually located? And you said Orion. That you said this
Within the blue
blue star, that it will be in the sphere, the dynamic, the dimension, however we want to talk about it, of the blue star Rigel as an ascended planetary reality within that system. And so as you're describing the Aeriopax, the Atomic universe, the function of portals and stargates, it's like, oh, so the old portal or stargate on Saturn, the new one with Mazuriel, that this is the means whereby, because I said, well, whoa, okay, there's the ascension, and we're all moving through this thing, and there's the numisome, and he said, yes, and then we'll be in Rigel. And I said, Rigel is like 600 light years away. How do we get there? And so what you're describing, as I understand it, is the Aeriopax is the underlying universal dynamic whereby that would occur in terms of the New Earth star, world system 2 would, it's a transdimensional means whereby, yes, whether it's the Mazuriel or Saturn or whatever, the ascension energies, and they cross the turning point, and then just boom, you're there. Wormhole, Star Trek. We have made it through the wormhole, Captain. That is that. Am I following this right?
Yes, it's a little more complex than that in the sense that it's not like the whole planet just rocks and stones and everything whizzes into it's about dissembling into the light codes, into the frequencies, the vibrations of things, and those frequencies that are connected to, as we've talked about, the planetary genius. And, so there's a lot of dimension to this. But yes, in the long term, that, in the simplistic form, that's what happens.
Okay. So, well, let's get a little bit further into. I think this would be of interest to people also. The question of time. And I remember in conversations with William Bueller, he talking about the various uses of the Aeriopax, and some of the synergy light sessions that we would do with Bill and Edie here in Crestone. He would talk about, in his wonderfully matter-of-fact way, because Bill was simultaneously just way up there and like totally grounded. He'd say, well, now, of course, if you're using the Aeriopax, you can time travel. I mean, you can go back to the Mesozoic era if you want, but it's really not a good idea. It's just, and you don't want to try to bring stuff back there. I mean, Philadelphia experiment, all kinds of things will go wrong, and sailors end up, caught halfway through metal walls. It's ugly. You don't want to go there. And I went, okay, check, got that, Bill. Won't be using the Aeriopax for time travel or taking my CD player with me. This is kind of what I see as a part of my role here. I mean, yes, I'm able to, go there to some extent and try to grasp these things on the high metaphysical plane. But could we talk a little bit about the role of time and, the reality of time travel, which is started to get some attention these days. I mean, there's mainstream media who are now beginning to say, well, yes, theoretically, scientists are now beginning to say it could actually be possible. But then you see, alternative media coming out saying that time travel has been used. There's fairly credible, to a certain extent, YouTube programs you can watch. There's the one about they had this government program, and they sent this 15-year-old kid back to Gettysburg on the day of Lincoln's address there. And it turns out to be a historical photograph that was discovered decades ago that's got this kid in it. He was a kid with a 1970s haircut and boots that are way too big for him, standing in the foreground of a historical picture that shows Lincoln in the background about to give the address. So, it's starting to come forward where people are going, and it actually, there are people in conversations about the election with me who have said, well, there is the book, The Last American President, from the late 1800s. I mean, there is Baron Trump. Trump has a son named Baron. And it's all in there. So this is all prophecy. Trump's bound to become president because, it's time travel. They knew it was going to happen. This is beginning to come into conversations, real world conversations with people with sufficient amount of, just enough leverage of some credibility. And the Baron Trump thing in the book is quite intriguing and undeniable. There's something weird going on there. I don't know what it is. But in terms of time travel and the function of the Aeriopax, I want to keep it within the ascension dynamic here, but it seems to me to be playing in. So have I given you anything we can jump off on here?
Yeah, well, first of all, definitely there is time travel going on, has been for many eons. Bill speaks of the time walkers. It's a whole other topic. We probably need to do a whole show just on, time travel. There's the whole thing with High Brazil, the disappearing island off the coast of Ireland, I believe. And I've written about that, an experience I had with all of that. So, yeah, it happens. Now, that doesn't mean you believe every conspiracy thing or everything that's put out there about it. But I do happen to believe the one with the little boy going to Gettysburg. That one registers in the Thothic meter. There are other things too that appear like time travel. Many people are aware that there was a book written before the sinking of Titanic, and the ship was called Gigantic or something very similar, and it was just almost a tale of what happened there. But those things can be sort of glimpses into potentials that are very strong. And the person receives it, not really realizing what they're doing. They get a mixture of it and they put it out in some form. So there are a lot of different things there, but yes, and you can't, the only way you can time travel is to use the Aeriopax. So, that can happen and does happen.
So, and then you got into, the relativity of time in the Atasic time for us, the use of one word by Thoth to describe it in the 80s, a different word in the 90s, that there are, transformations taking place on what we might call a trans-temporal level, if I may coin a word. It's probably a word out there, I've never heard it before. Can you talk about that a little bit more in terms of the role of the Aeriopax in ascension and the relativity of time?
Could you repeat that, Michael?
That was a good one. This is one of those deals where I go, not quite sure where I'm going with this, but I'm going to say it coherently using a lot of good words, and Maya will pick up on it, and we'll have something.
Well,
and you go, no, no, I'm sorry.
I just have to, say that I am recovering from what I believe is the virus, and that's why I'm coughing a little bit and everything. My brain is not working too well yet, so if I seem a little slow and things, that's the reason.
Well, you don't seem slow at all. I think I just threw you a curve that I didn't even quite know what I was asking myself. It's because this is very deep stuff, and bringing it into a direct, practical relationship to where we are. And it's so interesting. Okay, today is October 31st. It's All Hallows Eve. The veils are said to be thinning. That they, Samhain, the seasonal festival of Samhain, the traditional, All Hallows Eve festival going to pre-Christian times, is, the communion with the ancestors. There are friends of mine who are immersed in these dynamics, who are, hey, putting the word out. The veils are thinning tonight, this night, full moon, Halloween. Communion with the ancestors, asking blessings from the ancestors, creating personal altars tonight to your loved ones, to your lineage, to your heritage. That these dynamics are there for us to access. And of course, you and I are speaking from Crestone in the San Luis Valley, where the veils are thinner to begin with. So, and tomorrow is November 1st. The next day is Monday, November 2nd, and the next day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Right? And
Halloween, yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of timeline potentials, this is something you've just touched on. Okay, what was this book about the Titanic? What's this book about, last American president and Baron Trump, written in, the late 19th century? This is an expression of someone receiving time potentials. The way they're spinning it on the alternative media is, no, this is the white hats, QAnon folks going back in time travel right now to okay, let's just make sure everybody knows that our guy is the guy. And to me, this is, there may be some actual dynamic behind it of stuff going on. It fits the pattern of disinformation and psyops to me, is what this is primarily about. We'll see. But I'm bringing all this up because at this moment that we speak, we are in a very powerful timeline nexus, conversion of possible timelines that's going to unfold over the next 72 hours, right? 96,
Yes.
whatever it is. Is there an entry point for our discussion on that? Is anything coming through for you on that?
Well, excuse me again. Um, we have to see that everything around us, the vortex is spinning all the time, even though we don't recognize that. And of course, if the vortex is spinning, that means there are aeriopax is spinning, dimensional openings all the time. And we are going through micro moments in our own field all the time of time travel. I mean, it's micro, but we cannot be isolated. Even if we're not aware, if we have an Aeriopax systemic function, which we do, we are constantly tapping in to other dimensions. It's just how it is. So, because we're not aware of that enough, this can cause a lot of illusion, a lot of misunderstandings. And so, when periods of time get really hyper, like they are right now, that hyperactivity can cause all kinds of strange phenomena that is not genuinely attached to the Metatronic or full light spectrum.
Okay, so strange phenomena, sort of temporary timeline chaos. Is that what we're
Yeah,
looking at?
exactly. But out of the
Yeah.
chaos often emerges the clarity. But you have to divest yourself of all the illusory programs before you can get that clarity. And in order to divest yourself of them, sometimes they just come up choking everything because it's the last stand,
Yeah.
Kind of like a drug addict stops taking the drugs, but then they have all these, delusions because they're not on the drug. And yet, if they can hang in there long enough, it will clear out.
Yeah, it's kind of like the dynamic that yogis and masters will often use when you start to engage in a spiritual discipline, some kind of spiritual practice. Like, for example, what's called in India japam, which is the ceaseless repetition of the divine name, from the heart, the deepening of consciousness. Okay, so you're an ordinary person, with all kinds of jumble of chaos, in your brain, what they call the samskaras of all the, the grooves you grooved over the centuries and millenniums of, your worldly thoughts, your worldly patterns and habits. Now you're starting to pour in the vibration of the divine name. You are consciously bringing it in. So they compare it to you got a glass of water. The water's kind of clear, but at the bottom, there's a layer of mud and muck at the bottom. Now you are pouring in the clearer, purer waters of the divine into it because you are repeating the divine name and invoking purification. Well, what happens? It stirs up all the mud at the bottom. And so a lot of beginners on the spiritual path will go, I'm 10 times worse than I was. I can't get these, terrible thoughts out of my head. And I'm thinking about, jealousy and sex and anger and greed. And, I'm just like, I'm worse than before. This doesn't work. This is depressing. Get me out of it, But it says, no, you're stirring up the mud because now you are pouring in the divine name. Just keep pouring it in. And eventually, as you say, clarity, will emerge. And eventually, the mud will be carried out by the stream, and the water will be pure. So that's what we certainly hope as many of us as possible can move into that feeling about what's going on in the world these next few days, most likely these next few weeks and months, these next few years. Can we talk a little bit about the second video, the very brief one that we're sharing with people today, in terms of how to use it and the difference between portals and stargates?
Yeah. Well, as I say on the video, I've been given various types of protocols with this. It's not just one protocol. I mean, this is a vast topic. You can bring in a lot of different protocols that would do the same job. Um, and William Bueller developed one based on what I gave him from Thoth. And it's a very good one, but it's complex. If you're not a synergic student, if you don't know how to work with synergy, you're going to go, I think I'll pass on that. So what I did very, very simply was give just the basic idea of how to work with it and allow the soul, the entity that's working with it, to fill in the blanks organically. So it's not a big deal, but I feel at the same time it's a workable system to begin to get you in touch with and communicating with your Aeriopax function. So, I don't want to make too much out of it. It's a short video, but I think it kind of hits the spot.
Well, I'm really glad to hear this and that you've done this, because I remember having a conversation with Bill just a few days before his passing, and I recorded it on my iPhone.
Really?
And I said, Bill, you keep talking about the central importance of the Aeriopax, and I don't feel I've really absorbed it fully. Can we talk? Can you share more about that? And so he took me through it. Now, Bill wasn't at his best then. He was on his way out. He passed about 5 days later. So this is a real service to bring this forward and allow us to work with a slightly simplified but still powerful version of this, so that we can start to open the door and then go further if we feel so drawn.
Well, and also, I didn't mention it on the video, but I'd like to fill it in a little more. You see, people can organize, come together. Organize is a big word, but and go to sacred sites like they do, and work the Aeriopax in those sites. And this heals the dimensions and helps to, I mentioned this, but this is a big deal. I've never been able, not able because I can't. The work I do is, all over the place. I mean, it has a lot of different places. I can't take something and say, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on. We're going to work on this, and we're going to get organized, and we're going to get people together. And that's not my MO. I'm putting out information on a broad level. If someone would come along, or someone's and say, hey, I'd really like to take the Aeriopax out there with a group of people and go to some of these sacred sites and actually do it, then I would be willing at that point to expend a little extra energy to give them a little extra, direction, and yet allow them to do their own thing with it, but, give them a certain Thothic, program, and they'd go out and do this. But I can't organize that. Thoth wanted me to do this thing called Elixis Mundi. And the Elixis Mundi program has the Aeriopax as the basic function in it. It's on one of my websites. Well, I didn't go anywhere because nobody was going to step up to do it, and I'm not going to do it, So, but I'm just saying that, if somebody were of inclination to, they were already doing sacred journeys, or they wanted to do them, and they just added that as part of the picture, I think it would be very interesting, valuable thing to do.
Well, this puts me in mind of our friends who go around to the sacred sites doing the Holy Grail vortex practice and prayer. Chad and Gail and Mary Hardy, and we practiced that together at our Templar gathering here last year, right about this time. And is there a relationship between your experience of the Holy Grail vortex prayer and practice and that toroidal field and calling in through the universe, the great invocation?
Yeah, there is. I wouldn't say that it's obvious, but I can see it. I can see a relationship because they're working with dimensional frequencies, and the Aeriopax is part of that. So, yeah, but I think that the Aeriopax, the way I'm seeing it as working with it specifically, needs its own, uh, thing. It
It's
needs
all
somebody that,
separate. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the really real thing is beautiful as it is. It doesn't need any extra stuff. It's just like this needs to have its own program.
Right. Yeah. And certainly they've had remarkable experiences of, um, breakthroughs, transformations. Um, they practice the Holy Grail vortex prayer and ritual, you know, quietly, just a few souls in an open field near a sacred site. And it's breaking through the control grid. And they get
Right.
half an hour later, they get black helicopters and black tinted window SUVs showing up because the bad guys monitor that control grid they've got over the planet. And when they see, and they know that these people know who they are now. It's like, yeah, it's Mary Hardy. Um, so this sounds to me as if it's, I mean, for the area packs, the purposes to which it can be put are practically endless, right?
Oh, yeah, they are. And as I said, uh, it's not my place to take one subject and just, live it. But my whole idea, especially in these latter part of my life, and with all the information I've collected, is to find people that are willing to take this material, all different sections of it, whatever, what sings to them, and develop it. While I'm here, I could give some guidance on it at a distance, and they have the information, and we could work with that. But the idea is not just to, like when I'm gone, let's say, okay, Maya and Thoth here, we've got to follow this, and then we do that. Okay, that's what we do because that's what it said here. No, I want it to be a basis for a living, growing dynamic because that's the way Thoth intended it. That's the way universe intended it. And so I want to find people that can do that, want to do that, and have the acumen, the spiritual acumen to take it and go, I see. And how about this, Maya? What if we did this here? And what about that? Oh, yes, yes. And, I have a friend that knows how to do this, to develop it. That's
Yeah.
really what we're going now.
Well,
And I'm gone.
yeah, this brings to mind, okay, where could this immediately take place? Well, obviously, there's a community here in Crestone that shouldn't be too hard to get 16 of us together. If we want to talk about a sacred site, this is about one of the most sacred sites around the valley, Sacred On, Mount Blanca, all of it. So we'll explore that later, folks,
Yeah.
and perhaps have a, um, a video to share with you of our expression of putting this into practice. And as you say, you can then take that as an inspiration to further development, as long as we're understanding the essential dynamic of what we're working
Exactly.
with and how to work with it.
Right.
Incorporate it with song or ecstatic dance or
Yeah. Go for
yeah.
About first moved here, Simeon and I, the very first thing that Thoth had us do almost was install an Aeriopax. And I say here, it's really when I moved back 17 years later, and I had this house rented for me. I didn't know where it was really. I mean, I could walk, even I could walk to where I lived before. But that's how close it is. And this was not planned. And where I lived before was where we put the Aeriopax installation. So we could, go back, develop. There's all kinds of things. But there's something else that I'd like to share here. And I'm not going to get into it deeply because it's going to have its own, not only show, but its own project completely. And that is this cube, the 9010 technology, but the cube that I've been able to, it's on its way. It's in Denver now. Hopefully it'll get here in a few days. Due to wonderful people who chipped in to be able to supply the funds for it. Because the cube in and of itself creates pure quantum energy, and it's for real. But what we're going to be doing with it is Thoth has an idea, a program to connect it to a cube called, he calls the Hierophi in the inner earth. It's a whole program, not going to go into it all now, but the cube with its pure quantum frequency connecting to the Thoth codes, or the Tesla codes, you call them that too, because that's part of it, coming through the Hierophi into the root symbol, into the cube. It just develops this whole unique field. And for planetary service and for planetary healing. And so the Aeriopax, of course, is a functional dynamic of quantum frequency experience. So it's going to be, you know, what we're talking about doing Aeriopax stuff here. We'll have the cube, and it's going to be, you know, I can't, I don't even need words for it. I get all excited. I can't talk about it. So, you know, stay tuned, because part of the program is certainly to do the work that Thoth wants here, but part of the program is to burn objects in the cube with with various frequencies of Thoth codes that you will be able to own, you know, have in your life, and know how to operate it and what to do with it. These could be taken all over the world. You know, I mean, the potential is enormous. That's why I just get all tongue-tied when I try to talk about it.
Well, I'm certainly very excited to learn more about it. You know, we're wearing these. Can we talk about the capsules? Are we? Oh, okay. That's a great shot. I'm going to do a freeze frame on that shot. It's so
Right.
simultaneously cosmically cute, right? Of Maya going like this. And oh, here is the sacred bracelet. Anyway.
Well, these are developed by the 9010 technology as well.
Right.
It comes in Germany, actually, originally Switzerland, I believe. And these capsules are incredible too. And again, I'm not going to go into all now, but they're very healing. They're very supportive of quantum energy in the body. But the cube is the thing, because that's the one that we can work with. It's the highest developed product they have, and it's the one that Thoth is all set to put. He calls it the root. I've already created the symbol, the schematic. It's just a schematic. It sits in the cube. And I don't know if it's there forever. It just has to be a certain time, and then it's part of the cube. I don't know a lot of details yet. But when the root is established in that cube, it connects directly to the Hierophi and allows all these frequencies to interact with it and move through it. And so there you go. I don't even know the whole program yet. Thoth is just giving it to me piecemeal as I need to know.
All right. Well, the news should be soon. We're going to be working with this within a matter of days. And probably a good moment here to just let everybody know, you know, this has been made possible through the generosity of some, you know, supporters of Blue Star Rising, of Maya's work, of the, you know, New Earth Inner Academy. And so any help, you know, that you are able to give to us financially, any donations is deeply appreciated. It's making possible this program. It's making possible these sacred science gifts and tools to be brought forward. So, you know, there is a link. There's a donation link that you'll find underneath this video. And I'll also mention, you'll be seeing on this video a short, separate video on Maya's work as a counselor, as an Akashic translator, for, you know, to work with you individually. And, you know, this is work she's been doing for decades. It's very beautiful and profound. I've experienced it myself. So please look for that at the conclusion of this video, and do help us if you can. It's deeply appreciated. So, and of course, like and subscribe and all that good stuff too, and share Blue Star Rising, Templar Awakening. Yeah. So this is a little bit of a tangent, but when we talk about the Templar awakening, do you get the sense, Maya, that the Templars in the medieval times and then going forward, after the persecution, the various surviving streams, do you get the sense that there were surviving Templar streams or groups that worked with the Aeriopax?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Um, I could go into one, but that's just take us off to another timeline. But very definitely, there were Templars, and then there were Templars. The core Templars were very different from the outer Templars, not entirely, but the
Yeah.
outer Templars were dogmatic, and but the inner Templars were total mystics, and um, they were on a whole other level of experience, and that's I know that, historically, King of, what was it, France, whatever, wanted to do him in because they had all that money and he wanted to have the money. Well, that's the top story, and that's not untrue. But he also became fearful of the power, the spiritual power that they couldn't understand that was underlying so much,
Mm-hmm.
That's them of worshiping Baphomet and all this stuff because they didn't get it, and they actually were frightened of some of that because that was a period that everybody was frightened of their own shadow. I mean, you cure a
Yeah.
baby with tonsillitis and you're a witch. So
Right. Yeah, that was 1307 AD, October 13th, and King Philip IV of France. And I remember you saying that the inner Templars actually sort of withdrew um, from the Templar stream in advance of the persecution, that they recognized the order had been compromised.
yes,
Uh, that's a separate topic, but it's interesting to me. I was just reading in Paramahansa Yogananda's wonderful commentary on the Gospels, the second coming of Christ, the resurrection of the Christ within you. Um, he was talking about the sacred science of working in the spine, and of course, if you go back far enough, the Templars connect, through the Sufis, the Essenes, to the Jedi priesthood, from which comes the Jedi. The Jed pillar of the spine is the pharaonic Egyptian symbology. And that Yogananda was talking about this isn't just the Vedas. Yes, the Vedas in India, it goes furthest back, but it starts to name the various saints of various religions who practiced this sacred technology. And, he talks about the mystical rabbis of Judaism. He talks about, the Sufis within Islam. And then he mentions a number of Christian mystics. And I love that he said specifically Saint Bernard of Clairvaux and the orders he founded. Well, what is one of the orders that he founded? It's the Templars.
right, exactly.
So that particularly touched me, as you can imagine, because of a personal connection that we have to Bernard of Clairvaux and his subsequent lifetimes. So yeah, that Templar connection um, is one that maybe we can take a little bit of a tangent here. Maybe we'll get an intuition about whether this works or not. But we are called Blue Star Rising Templar Awakening. And as I shared on the previous program, I had an official role within um, a, a a formidable attempt over a number of years to officially, lineally, according to customary international law, Chevallier Protocol, blah, 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 you know, um, restore the original Templar order. And, there were inherent energetic liabilities that emerged, and after 5 years, a whole community of us withdrew from that movement and from that specific organization. So, here we are doing our best to carry forward what we perceive as the true Templar stream of sacred science. We use Johannine Templars as our name, specifically to reference the mystical stream in Christianity, the Johannine Church, as it's referred to by scholars as the Petrine. That's for Peter. That's Rome. That's centralized authority. Salvation through the mediumship of the priests and the sacraments, etc. And then there is the mystical stream of John, Johannine, which also connects through the Mary Magdalene. It connects to the Cathars. It connects to the Isle of Iona and the stream of Mary Magdalene and Christ and John Martinus. So I just bring that up because when we're talking about the Templars, I like to get specific. I like to clear the mists. There's so much, confusion, appropriation of the name. It's a magical name. You start to talk Templars, and people go, "Oh, well, I'm descended from Templar blood," or like, "Oh, well, I'm in touch with the real Templars. They've gotten in touch with me, and I'm in touch with them, and I'm one of them." And you know, I've gotten very leery of invoking the Templar name too often because of all that. Because all it comes down to, what does it mean to be a Templar? Well, it means that you do your best to embody and to practice and to pass on sacred knowledge for the upliftment of humanity with the understanding of the big picture of the ascension timeline. And there's a code of behavior. And it's not just a medieval chivalric code. It's universal. You'll find it, with the Sufis. You'll find it with the Kshatriya warrior caste of India. You'll find it in many places. But this is what it means to me and to us here in Crestone to say that Blue Star Rising is about the Templar awakening, and we're happy to invoke the Blue Star, Rigel, and its connection to the origin of the human soul. Anyway, that's my little speech. I just felt the need to get a little bit more specific about it because I don't like to invoke the Templar name loosely. I don't invoke it loosely. And we're very specific about what it means to us. So I just needed to share that.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if, we might be at a wrap-up point. There's so much about the Aeriopax that I think, we can explore further. Please, everybody, look at the link below. In fact, we will, I think, tack it onto this program. You will see immediately following first a sharing by Maya about her wonderful work as a counselor, which you can take advantage of. And then we will share the brief video on how to actually use the Aeriopax in a simplified way. So do you have any other any other lines of exploration that you want, or are you feeling that we're at a closure?
I think we're pretty well complete with the show. I'm just really happy to be able to get back and do a show again. It's been kind of a rough last 2-3 weeks for me, and I'm feeling like, it's nice to come back and do my thing again.
Yeah, and you look great, you sound great. I know you're a little worried about your cough or not being 100%, but it's wonderful to have you bringing forward the Tribe Light stream here again to all our friends. So thanks everyone for being with us. We'll see you next time. Stay right here this channel, immediately following our closure here. There's the Aeriopax video and Maya's sharing on her work. So God bless us, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.
The Aeriopax. This is the dynamic, the engine that runs all portals and stargates, whether natural ones, created ones, or ones that are natural but have been redesigned, shall we say. The Aeriopax, in its true full operation, is Metatronic, full light spectrum. However, if the system is damaged, the portal, for whatever reason, magnetically or what, or it has been not created properly, that is, to be a full spectrum operation, can have an imbalanced system, meaning that the Aeriopax is compromised. So it's not a full presence Aeriopax. We could make up another name for it, but whatever it is, it's not really a full Isis-I Aeriopax dynamic. And I certainly wouldn't want to go through a Stargate or a portal that had a compromised Aeriopax. And remember, the difference between a portal and a Stargate is that a Stargate is a universal dynamic. It reaches into a full spectrum, other dimensions, and it has certain aspects of it that are all relatable to high being consciousness. So it really isn't correct to say that you can create a Stargate that is compromised and still be a Stargate. Now, Thoth is using these words. He's creating his own language around this. He didn't come up with the word Stargate, of course not. It's been around a while. But he's taking it and using it to mean a really highly defined Metatronic field, access to a highly defined Metatronic field. Whereas a portal, well, there are a lot of different kinds of portals. And some of them goes very, just to one location. Some of them are very dangerous to enter. There's all kinds of things with portals. And some of them are really, well structured and well developed and good stuff. But they are not necessarily Stargates. So all portals are not Stargates, but some portals are Stargates. So looking at it from that perspective, now we have to go to the human element and how our natural energetic functioning with the auric system, the energy bodies, light bodies, the whole thing is naturally a field that can operate a portal dynamic. Not a Stargate. Can't have a Stargate in a body because it's just too vast. But you can have a portal. And by fully activating the Aeriopax within a human form, if you know what you're doing and you have the high enough Metatronic consciousness, one can simply move from one state, dimension, place to another. It can be almost limitless. However, only beings like Thoth and angelic beings, that type of mastery can operate it on that level. But back to us human mortals, we certainly can use the Aeriopax dynamic, and we can activate it to a degree that allows us to tap in to our more universal being, to the what Thoth calls Maga soul, the higher soul development, the flash point that creates all rays that go into soul fields, and we all have a flash point in the universe. So we can develop a form of interdimensional communication with other aspects of our being. We can use it for healing, because if you can have some kind of relationship with your Aeriopax, with your that dynamic, you can do micro shifts in time, in timelines, micro shifts, which can allow healing to take place. And more than anything else, simply an expanded consciousness. There are many ways one can activate this dynamic on various levels. And I have received from Thoth in different times certain ways this can be done. But most of the information I received is really rather complex. Unless somebody really wants to get into it, put stuff aside and work on it, it's not that easy to follow. So I've been seeking one a process that would be a lot easier, more organic, and allow the individual to fill in the blanks. Something that just starts them off, and they can feel what is right for them to place into that basic dynamic. So what I am seeing is exceptionally simple, because again, it's simply a starter point. And that is starting with the heart chakra. Imagine that you are literally inside the Aeriopax, and your heart is activating a spinning movement through your body. Now, the solar plexus is very much involved too, but actually the heart consciousness has to begin the process. And as the spin moves up and down through the toroidal field that you are, that your energy self is, this toroidal field is going to start expanding and becoming more, well, let's say full of light to your senses. Using some kind of an I am focus is good. Maybe if you're just saying, I am that I am. I am that I am. The reason for this is that, according to Thoth, the I am is focusing on the higher developed soul self and not the incarnated being. But as you say that, you are drawing that higher soul self into connection with the incarnated being more consciously. So, seeing yourself at the center of the field, of the Isis eye, your heart chakra activating the spin, and then as it is activated through the heart, it begins to spin in the other chakras. The next would be the solar plexus, actually. And from that, it would move both up and down. So it would start going down through the lower chakras, but it would also start ascending through the higher chakras. And when it reached the crown, it would move outward through the torus shell and down into the feet. So I wish I had an actual visual for this, which I really don't. But again, once you start the spin in the heart chakra, you place it into the solar plexus, which generates sort of a solar explosion, and it moves then both downward through the lower chakras and upward through the higher chakras, back up through the heart into the throat, into the third eye, and then into the crown. And when it reaches the crown, and at the same time it's reached the base chakra, it's going to loop over and connect between the two, following the toroidal field. So practicing this even once a day, just for a few minutes, can allow your senses to get in touch with the actual motion that's going on all the time in your energy bodies. Because the Aeriopax is never still. It's always operative because we are all living portals. We just are. We're interdimensional living portals. So once you get in touch with that frequency, you can become more flexible in how you interact with it and how you develop it and how you control it. By control, I mean, focus it so that it's not just spinning around all over the place, but it has a purpose, a direction, a spiritual attribute that it can hold to. And this comes through the development, of course, of one's own understanding of your energy system and how it operates. And you don't have to approach it from an intellectual standpoint, but just from a feeling, sensing, being standpoint. And so I've given you here some very basic guidelines to follow. So take it and see where it leads you.